Welcome to the IoT podcast show. I'm your host, Tom White. Today we are joined by Jan-Marc Lischka. Jan-Marc is the partner at Fifth Industry. Jan-Marc has an extensive background in manufacturing and has previously headed up Industry 4.0 at Siemens for over a decade. Jan-Marc is now implementing his knowledge to assist in factory digitalisation, and we're very pleased to have him on the show. Thank you for coming on, Jan-Marc.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks, Tom, for inviting me.
You're very welcome. Could we start by just explaining your background in manufacturing and your position within Fifth Industry and what that entails?
Yes, of course. Yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, my background is really manufacturing. I'm really throughout a manufacturing guy. So I worked the past 15 years within Siemens in various positions in the manufacturing space. So I was heading some factories both in Central Europe and Germany. And now I'm a co-founder and partner at Fifth Industry. We are a company focusing on helping factories to transform their operations into really the digital world. So we provide a ready-to-use app suite really to get away out with, I mean, all the paperwork, all the manual stuff that is still being used in many factories all over the world. And so, yeah, that's our focus. Aside that, I'm also a CEO and co-founder of an impact business called Manuyo. And we are focusing on bringing products manufactured on the African continent into the European market in order to create really also sustainable impact. So that's a second topic I'm working on.
Wow. Okay. You must be quite busy then. There's a lot of things going on.
Yes, but I mean, it's fun. It's fun.
What takes up more of your time, Manuyo or Fifth Industry?
It's Fifth Industry, definitely. But yeah, I mean, it's a bit balancing the topics, of course, always.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And I think Fifth Industry is the main thing that we're obviously concerned about here on the IoT podcast, right? So just to delve in a little bit deeper into that, obviously digital transformation is fueling economic growth, despite circumstances that we've had recently with the pandemic. How have you applied your individual knowledge from IIoT into your current business and the transgression from Siemens into Fifth Industry?
Yes, I mean, the question for me and also the other co-founders was really, if we look into operations, and that's not a local topic. You can see that all across the world. You can see that in very different industries and also in different sizes of organization, from really mid-sized companies up to multinational organizations. If you look into operations, you still see many people using not up-to-date technologies to collaborate. So you see people, I mean, really writing manual stuff on shop floor boards. You see people typing in Excel forms and stuff like that. People using email chains to collaborate and to communicate. And that is not longer the way we should work, right? I mean, in our private life, we use our smartphone literally for everything, right? I mean, you order a pizza, you rebook your flight, you check in real time where something is happening. That is all part of our daily life. But in the industry, we are not yet there in many places, and that needs to change. I mean, factory digitalization is a topic of I think the last 2 decades or something like that. But still, the topics are not solved everywhere, and that has certain reasons. And this is the background what we want to tackle, because we see that in the past, factory digitalization was always a matter of huge projects, of huge initiatives. I mean, binding a lot of resources, costing a lot of money, and taking a very long time to implement. So I think everybody who spent some time in operational position knows projects like that. You hire consultants, you create requirement specifications and so on. You have steering committees and stuff like that. And then half a year later or 1 year later, the operator down at the shop floor sees the first piece of software, and that is hindering the transformation. So what we focus on is really to create a way into factory digitalization, which is really fast, which is very effective, and is also linked to a different way of how we work culturally with the people, because we are really convinced that this is the way how to create the successful digital transformation for factories.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that, Jan-Marc. Yeah, I think we see that a lot from our side and in our line of work, that legacy systems are really cumbersome, but they're equally hard to move across into something new. It's quite easy in a domestic context and private individuals to keep up with electronic advancements, but you tend to find in manufacturing, because it's always been done that way, people sometimes don't think to change it. And yes, it's hard to kind of get the cranks turning to be able to make that happen. I mean, just to go down a little bit further on that, I mean, for you and me and for some of our listeners, it's obvious why automation and digitalization is a priority for manufacturing companies. But one of the targets that we have within this podcast is to try and demystify this. So for the average person that isn't involved in the industry, why is it such a priority to digitize manufacturing companies at the moment?
Yes. And I mean, that's in most cases what we see, that is about cost effectiveness. So according to our research and our understanding, you can say a typical factory that is like 500 to 1,000 people working there, I mean, they're wasting 1.5 to 2.5 million euros unused savings and cost effectiveness potential per year. So that's a huge driver in many cases. And then there's a second driver, and that comes with new technologies. And we know all these technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning. I mean, I think it's clear that if you put information, day-to-day information, manually on a shop floor board or in an Excel spreadsheet or something like that, the access to use these technologies would be pretty limited. I mean, it's not possible, as simple as that. And then there's a third driver, and this is coming with generation change in operations, because more and more, as everybody is getting used to work with digital tools in their private life, people get more and more unsatisfied to work in the old way and the manual way, or with cumbersome legacy system, as you mentioned. They expect simply the same way of user experience, the same way of user interfaces, also in their business working environment. And so that's driving employee satisfaction at the end of the day. So these are the three main drivers from our point of view.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's really clear and concise for people to understand. Clearly, IoT and automation have made it possible to enhance manufacturing productivity somewhat. I'd like to talk a little bit about digital twin, if I may. So I've mentioned this on the show in the past, but the Port of Rotterdam is a clear example and one of an enterprise scale of digital twin. What is your view on digital twin and its impact for the future of manufacturing, Jan-Marc?
Yeah, I mean, I think digital twin to me also is sometimes a word which is I mean, really like mystified. Yeah, what is it exactly, and so on. What from my point of view is important, that we create a working environment where the people working in the shop floor, also in support process, really have an easy access to data, and where they can easily log in with the information they daily use. They have an easy way of collaborating with each other, and that's from our point of view the key point also when it comes to digital twins. So to give an environment where the people can, which really is supporting their collaboration and their day-to-day working routines.
Yeah, thank you. And in terms of Fifth Industry, and how long has Fifth Industry been going on for now? How long have you been in business?
It's now the third year, yeah, we're gaining traction, and so it's an interesting journey. Yeah.
Okay, all right. You made it past the difficult stage. They often say the first 2 years are the hardest, right?
Oh, yeah, I think I mean, if you want to change something in how industry works and how especially, I mean, traditional industry, and manufacturing certainly is a traditional industry. If you want to really create a fundamental change in working that, I think that's a longer journey. So yeah, but it's an interesting journey.
Yeah, sure. I think for me, in my line of work and the various activities that I'm involved with in IoT, you have to be interested, and you've got to be involved in the business and not just servicing the industry. And that's a phrase that we use a lot. And it's really important to have a real thirst and a passion behind these things, and to understand them, and really the countless things that can happen because of this. Just moving back onto the topic of obviously manufacturers and some of the work that Fifth Industry is doing, what would you consider as the key considerations that manufacturers should take into account when choosing to implement IoT into their supply chain?
Yeah, for me, it is the fundamental first consideration that that companies need to take is really the question of what is the approach. In the past, we always used in the industry, we always used quite top-down approach to transform processes into the digital world. So with top-down planned projects, with top-down executed projects, and that was the way how to do that for decades now. While if we look into the technologies that we have available right now, with using cloud technologies, for example, and also with the changes of working culture, we see that there are different approaches available right now, and I'm really convinced that this is really the deal breaker between, I mean, successful and not so successful transformation projects. So what we see, it's much more successful with less risk if we use an iterative approach. If we start with small teams, with the mindset of let's say evolving things, of evolutionary approach, to start with smaller teams and then to go modular, to go in smaller steps, to go in smaller sprints in an agile way, and then to have systems and digital landscapes in the factory really growing from that. On the opposite side, so how we did that in the past, that was always a lot of, okay, what are eventually all the functions a system would need, and then we would program the system and so on. That's not longer the approach we should go. So this team focused, employee focused, and small steps, iterative, modular approach, that's really the key from my point of view to success. And we see many examples, many really encouraging examples in the industry, and also in our business, where we really developed applications for factory directly in the shop floor, including the operative workers, and you are much faster that way. You have a much higher employee engagement during that way, because the people really have an influence on what their digital working environment will look like, and you get applications out which are really used, and where the people really say, well, that's great, let's apply them. And I think these are the points which are really the key in order to make digitalization projects successful.
Yeah. So in effect, Jan-Marc, what you're describing is almost like an incubation type
Yes.
projects within a business, running through proof of concept and doing it end to end in a small capacity, so
Yes.
that you can see the end result. And then the theoretical reason behind that is that because it works on a smaller scale, you can just expand it out, within a larger scale of the business.
And you create a different dynamics. I mean, how did we? What was the last software on the mobile phone which we all, I mean, tried out new? Maybe it was Telegram instead of WhatsApp or whatsoever, something else. So how did we adopt these technologies? I would say in most cases it was somebody else who told us, hey, I'm using this new app and that's really cool. This is how we adopted, I don't know, Airbnb. This is how we adopted many of the applications we have on our mobile phone. And then we downloaded it and we tried it out. And if we say, okay, that's nice, then maybe we upgrade it from the free version to the premium version. So that was the way of adopting technology. So how can we translate this approach of adopting new technologies into the industry workspace? And I think this is exactly the way how we work. That we start with an incubating team. I like that term a lot. We start with an incubating team, and once they are successful applying a certain app or a certain software, then automatically their colleagues will come and say, "Hey, you have something new. What's that? What is that application?" And they get curious, and so you have the early adopters, and then you have the fast followers to join in. So the whole approach of bringing software into the organization changes by that, creates way less effort, way less needs to train people, to motivate people to use a new technology or a new software, and this is why it's so successful.
Yeah, I can surely understand. I think incubation and engagement, right? So
Yes.
when people want to use this, they're behind it, they tell their friends. It's like word of mouth advertising.
And that works in the industry the same way like in private life at the end of the day.
Yeah. What are the things that you mentioned at the start of this is that you said manufacturing businesses and their legacy systems have been slower to adopt to IoT-based initiatives compared to the private industry, and that's evident clearly if you look out at various IoT use cases. And this is a big question, and I don't expect you to answer it all, but what can fifth industry do in particular, and what can we all do to encourage manufacturers to be equally motivated in transforming their businesses and have this osmosis effect for other businesses to adopt a modern deployment of IoT and to take them out of the dark ages, right?
Yes.
What do you think we can all do together to improve this?
Yeah. So our answer to that question is really our product, because our product is an app store, is a modular, it's a modular landscape of apps where manufacturers can select one to start. For example, a module to manage their orders, or a module to report maintenance incidents between shop floor operator and maintenance guy. So really small modular apps, really what you just can start on a tablet or on a mobile phone, ready to use. And from there, they can take their digitalization journey. So they might start with one application, and then they figure out what is the next use case they tackle with the next application. And what we encourage manufacturers is really to say, to adopt this way of using software like we do in private life. So you download it and you start testing it with a small team. And after 6 weeks or 2 weeks or 4 weeks or so, they made experiences, and they come automatically to the situation that they say, well, Now it would be nice to have an interface to another system. Now it would be nice to get some data out of SAP or out of an ERP system in it. And then we can start building on it. But it's a pull from operation and not a push top down into the organization. And I think what let's say we as leaders in the industry, as managers, have to take into consideration is the huge creative potential and the huge motivation that the people on the shop floor have to bring in new technologies and to bring in digital solutions, because it makes their life easier. And if we take that into consideration, it's really opening up a lot of potential. And what we also see, if we are talking about the newer technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning, which is, according to my experiences, in many industries, well understood that this has a huge potential to automate certain repetitive tasks, for example. But no clue how to approach that. No clue how to include that into day-to-day operations. And there we have an answer on it, because if you are providing your software using cloud technologies like we do of the major cloud providers, they have very easy to use AI modules in it. So you can set up a small project team once you have your data in the cloud. You can set up very easily a small team which starts to play around with that, to test things, to try out things. So we made some exercises, for example, for image recognition. It's a matter of a few hours and you have the first image recognition algorithm trained. And then if you do that with the people on the shop floor or in the operations, automatically they come with ideas. Wow, if this is possible, we could do that. Or let's try this. And it starts to evolve. And this is, from my point of view, the beauty of the technologies, like the cloud technologies we have available right now, that it's possible to come to leveraging these technologies.
Yeah, I think it's a movement, isn't it? Ultimately, and everything is a movement and a shift. The very fact that it's called Industry 4.0.
Yes.
Being the fourth revolution of such with technology in industry, is clear to see. And I think you're right, and if I can take anything away from this, it's the incubation of the proof of concept that it will work in the smaller examples within larger organizations, and it's the engagement between the various stakeholders of that business. And whilst other people are watching what their peers or their competitors may be doing as well, and this whole movement will bring them forward. So,
Yes.
No, it's really interesting. Thank you so much. I mean, Jan-Marc, thank you so much for coming onto the show. We really appreciate it, and good luck with everything with Fifth Industry. Can we find you on LinkedIn, on Twitter? Do you have social networks and things that our listeners can look out for?
Absolutely, yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn, of course. And you can also see Fifth Industry there and Manuyo as well. So yeah, looking forward to catch up with you and also the audience. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Jan-Marc.